Thank you all for joining us today. This is the Setting the Foundation, Speaking the Large Language Model. A nice play on words for some LLM talk. We have with us today two very honored guests. We have Dr. Megan Anzelk, nailed it. Good mnemonic device. Thank you, Megan. And Cristina Fernandez de Souza with us today. I am Cheryl Wilson-Griffin, the CEO of Legal Tech Consultants, and the host of this great debacle that we're putting on for you today. This event is part of a larger series, and let me actually stop sharing my screen so you can see this lovely thing. This is part of a larger series called AI for Smart People that we're putting on. And it runs every Wednesday for the next 6 weeks. This is the first one, so we'll hope you'll join us for the next couple. And you'll certainly see plenty on social media. And there's also a QR code that we'll show again at the end of the session with links to register for the other ones. And the purpose of this whole series really came out of ILTACon back in August and some conversations we were having there around a couple of things. One, the fact that there are a number of people holding themselves out as experts in AI that maybe have only been digging into some of the stuff for 5, 6, 7 months, and really wanting to educate the folks about what's really going on. And the second thing is really trying to make sure that we all kind of are starting with a nice foundation and kind of building on that as time goes on. And so what you'll see in the series is we start here with Megan and Cristina on kind of trying to get the core stuff down, and then we build from there. So the next thing we think about is, okay, now we understand the basics. The next session is, okay, well, how do we decide where to start? And then the session after that is, okay, well, what about governance? And how do we think about guardrails? And then what have we already been doing with AI and not been able to, not actually consider that's actually AI? Then we think about recruiting and how do we fill this talent gap that we have in legal. And then the final one is, where are there AI tools that we can actually be using today safely? And so hopefully if you join us for all 6, you'll be a genius by the end. Maybe you'll be an AI expert. I don't know. But the idea is that we want to do this in kind of a product agnostic way. We're not selling anything here. The goal is to make everyone smarter. We're all smart people. Everybody in this legal industry has a certain level of intelligence, but this is new to almost all of us. And so really want to welcome everybody to ask questions. The chat's open, the Q&A is open. We can interrupt. We can jump in, and of course, by all means, you can connect with us afterwards and ask questions, make friends. Let's keep the conversation going. So it shouldn't end today. And with that, I'm going to allow Megan and Cristina to jump in, introduce themselves, and then let them kind of take us on this wild tour through AI and machine learning. So Megan, Cristina, take it away.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, we're super excited to be here. So I'm Megan Anzelk. I've been doing data and AI for a couple of decades in highly regulated spaces, in human capital. And so we're happy to share some of our knowledge and things that we think about when we're thinking about what to do with AI. I'll turn it over to Cristina to introduce herself, and then we'll get going.
Thank you, Cheryl. Megan. Cristina Fernandez de Souza. I have a little over 15 years of experience, global experience, cross-industry experience, combining strategy, data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and technology. So all that fun stuff, and really driving positive business impact and competitive advantage. Currently working with Megan at 3Arc Advisory as the Director of Data Science. We're super excited to be here and hope the conversation continues. Thank you.
All right, and so to start us off, so a little bit about, kind of where we are, and Cheryl kind of alluded to this, right? Really in the news cycle, it just feels like it is AI all the time. Every day there's a new headline. Some of them are about, it's a force for good and it can have really positive impact. Other headlines, it's going to be the end of existence. So it's really hard to kind of cut through that noise. And that's what we're going to do for you today. And of course, we're also in that kind of hype cycle piece, particularly around generative AI, which is newer. Everybody's getting acclimated to it. So to kind of be aware that there's going to be a lot of sort of inflated maybe expectations, along with hyperbole on both, the positive and negative end of the spectrum. And in terms of, if we think about kind of where we've been, there's a lot of highlights here of kind of the history of AI. If you go back to how humans have been trying to automate things that they do and things that are useful to their lives, you can actually go all the way back to 250 BC, and a system of water clocks that were self-regulating and self-adjusting, right? So the idea of having systems in place to help take over tasks that humans do has been around an incredibly long time. When we think about artificial intelligence, we pretty much think about the last 50 years or so. And that coinage of the term by John McCarthy back in the 50s, in the 80s was kind of the winter of AI, so not a lot happening. And then we started to see things like Deep Blue with chess playing and Roomba in the 2000s. And then obviously many, many more things over the last couple of decades. And really why some of this is accelerating and why it took so long to even get to this point is really about, you need both a large volume of data and significant compute power to process that data, right? And those are really the two key things that you need. And that's really only been in existence for a much shorter number of years. So anything you want to add on this one, Christina?
Just a few highlights around, in the 1980s, and I'll touch a little bit on this, the popularization of deep learning techniques, back in 2010s, BERT, came out with their question and answering, could train your own question answering system. So just a few of the many things that were done to get to where we are now.
And I think just to ask a question, so I think, and you touched on it, Megan, the big change really for us, and the reason that this technology has come to us, is processing power, right? Is compute power. It's the fact that this now does more than the thing that the computer that my mom worked at in the 80s that was the size of my whole house, right? We can now do more than we could ever do before. And so things that were conceptual in nature before are now real.
Yeah, I would say both that and that compute power enables you to continue to make advancements and refinements in the algorithm development.
Yeah, so where we kind of got stuck because we couldn't think any further, because we couldn't prove out our theories, we can now go further and further because we have the compute power to do it. Oops, seems like Megan might have frozen. Christina, is that accurate?
That is accurate. Our ability to acquire more data, because a lot of these algorithms require a lot of data. So I'll start with what's close to my heart is data. So, the neural networks that we've heard before, right back to the 1950s and 60s, the deep learning techniques, all of that requires a lot of data. So your ability to capture that data and then, like you said, process it has kept us sort of behind for a little bit. Okay. Megan is trying to connect. I love your comment on Roomba. It was one of the ones that I personally put in because there was so much as we were going through the history of AI, like Megan said, all the way back to 250 BC. I cherry picked a few things and Roomba was one of them.
Right, and the other interesting thing, so Shauna Hoffman, who's on the 3rd session in 2 weeks, she one of the thing that drew her into AI was the Watson. So she joined IBM shortly after Watson, right after she got out of college, after seeing IBM Watson on Jeopardy, and so that was the thing that hooked her as well.
Yeah. I did a few POCs with Watson when in my previous life in the computer industry, insurance industry, and fascinating.
Yeah, but so the takeaway I think here for the legal audience is that even though this feels like new technology, it's in fact very, very old, very, very established, and we're just to the point where we can actually do stuff with it.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, so we'll quickly cover a couple of key terms before we get too far into things, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the ways large language model space. So to kind of summarize the last few minutes of conversation, when we're talking about AI, we're really talking about a broad and umbrella term to describe anything that we're doing where we want machines to think and act like humans. So that is a very broad term, and there's a lot of things that fall under that umbrella. Underneath that umbrella is machine learning. So that's a subset of AI that focuses on algorithms that run and are trained on data, that can actually learn from data over time, and sort of that pattern recognition from data. And then generative AI is this newer area where we're talking about, again, a subset of the broader umbrella of AI, but you're about creating new information from existing. So ChatGPT is creating new text from an existing language base of text, new images from based on historical data, right? All of those things. And this slide was actually produced by Beautiful.ai, a generative AI tool. So you can prompt and say, give me an overview of the basic terminology of AI, and it will generate a slide like this. So that's an example right in front of us of generative AI. And then when we're talking about where we are and where we're going, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, right? So today, AI and machine learning is used really across every industry and many, many different kinds of use cases. So both Christina and I have a background in the insurance industry, and we used to do a lot of algorithm development and machine learning work in pricing of insurance policies. But it's also used to price the groceries in the store or how much you pay for a flight for your vacation. Obviously, many of us are familiar with the personalization of ads and the machine learning algorithms that are behind that. When we're doing real-time traffic.
Megan, you're chopping up quite a bit. I wonder if you want to maybe turn your video off so your audio comes through a little bit better.
Sure, is that better?
Maybe.
All right, we'll see how it goes. And then generative AI is still in the early days. And so that draft content generation piece around text and images is really a core use case. And then we're seeing a lot of people experimenting with it around automation within customer support functions. So highlighting key customer information to a customer support agent or streamlining some of those processes. In terms of where we're headed, we would expect that AI and machine learning with all of the different types of data, so text, images, video, et cetera, are going to become more mature. And we're seeing some use cases here with imagery, particularly aerial images. So this is used in the insurance industry to estimate claims or losses after a hurricane, right? The extent of damage in places. And we've seen that with some recent weather events. You can also use it as in agriculture to monitor the health of crop fields and estimate the yield that you'll receive from that harvest. We're also seeing sort of this tipping point around, we're reaching this point in time where the capabilities have gotten mature enough that you don't need an enormous budget and huge compute power to be able to do something with this yourself. This is really opening up the possibilities for smaller and medium-sized businesses to be able to take advantage of these capabilities. And that's something that Christina and I are pretty excited about. And then on the generative AI side, right, for this audience, I'm sure everybody's familiar and has seen lots of the different legal issues that have arisen. And we're obviously going to see a lot of that play out over the coming months and years. We would expect to see a lot more deep fakes and misinformation and an increase in the level of sophistication around these. Again, you now need less data to be able to do this than you used to. So, we've seen examples of, the music video with Drake and The Weeknd. We've seen Vladimir Zelensky we're going to see this at a lower level. So the mayor of your town, a key government official in, a smaller municipality, the CEO of your company, right? You're going to see this where you don't need as much training data. We're also seeing more niche solutions start being built by particular industries or even within a company. And Bloomberg is an example here where they're really building their own customized generative AI because they have enormous volumes of data within Bloomberg to be able to do that and do that well. And then as we all experiment with this, we're going to learn what are the use cases that are really good for generative AI and what are the ones that are more, we need to monitor, we need more human in the loop, or maybe they're just not very good use cases. That's something that we'll just learn with experimentation and over time as all of us start testing this out. And then I'm going to turn it over. Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I was just going to ask, a question came in from the attendees. We've not seen a lot of adoption yet of AI and machine learning, whether it's generative or otherwise within legal. But are you seeing it more broadly adopted in other industries so far?
Yeah, I think so. I think what we've seen is the predominant adoption of AI, I think, has been a little bit opaque to people. And that's where, some of the use cases in that left-hand column, right? It really does embed an awful lot of our daily lives. It's just not very in your face about it, right? So the insurance industry, as an example, has been using machine learning techniques now for decades. This isn't new to that. Very highly regulated. Obviously, marketing is an area that's used these kinds of capabilities for quite a while. So I think a lot of those industries are in a better position in some ways because they kind of know how to work with this and how to adapt to some of the evolution. We're starting to see more companies and more industries start to play around with this and take advantage of it. So I think we're seeing more broadening, especially as the data itself gets bigger and people are trying to figure out how to extract insights from it. So I think you're really seeing this in every industry, just exactly which use cases vary a little bit based on the company priorities and what they're doing. Christina, I don't know if there's anything you'd add.
No, just that, like Megan said, I can talk about insurance. Way back in 2015, nearly 10 years ago, we were doing pretty innovative stuff with images. We didn't necessarily have the compute power, so that held us back. But other industries are catching up. They are learning from their peers. They're learning from, like I said, other industries. They know that there's a huge competitive advantage to it. I think, and Megan's going to talk about a little bit on how you get started. I know there are other sessions coming up on that, but there are multiple ways where industries are using it, maybe not as sophisticated as some other ones.
Well, and it's interesting too. I think when I look at even the list of kind of use cases that you're identifying today, you think about fraud, for instance, or even insurance, right? These are highly regulated industries that have a lot of customer data that in theory are similar in nature to legal, right? Or banking. Those are the ones that we always think kind of go together. But when you think about fraud, that's risk mitigation, right? So you're using AI to reduce risk, not increase risk. And so maybe those kind of internal use cases are the places in legal where we start looking for are some of our use cases. They're internal, they reduce risk. So just something that jumped out at me as I look at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Sorry, take it away.
All right. And then Christina, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So I'm really touching, a little bit of the technical, but at a very high level. So what are large language models? Really, they are deep learning algorithms. Again, like we mentioned, deep learning algorithms became popular in the 1980s, need a lot of data and compute power. And so now they're gaining a lot of traction. What do they do? Some of the use cases here is content generation, marketing, emails, poems, generating new poems, new musical pieces. Summarization, I'm sure, in legal, there is opportunity there to use it, but I've used it more in like research papers. I've used it in my prior job in executive search, really summarizing interview notes, candidate notes, client feedback, translation from one language to another. Classification is another area that we use a lot with unstructured data. And question and answering systems. BERT was one of the first ones back in 2010. Now it's just taken over and become a lot more sophisticated. Next slide, Megan, please. All right, so how do we use an LLM? One of the ways to interact with an LLM is by prompting. So if you look at the left-hand window, that's called the context window. And it's, usually a few thousand words, depending on which system you're using, where you're going to enter your prompt. And prompting is really the process of giving the language model a task or instruction. So you enter something you want to achieve from the LLM. It goes to the LLM, it does its processing, and then it produces in a completion window, if you will, what the desired outcome is. Now, many of you have probably heard of this term prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is really trying to craft and optimize your prompts in a way that the LLM can achieve the desired outcomes the best it can, right? So I'll give you a kind of high-level example. So we have something called zero-shot prompting, where you're not actually giving an example. If I want to classify, so I want to do a sentiment analysis, and I want to classify a movie review. So I can ask the LLM, classify this review. I really like the movie. And then you have a sentiment, and it will answer. If it's a really good LLM, it'll answer positive. And then the next level is one-shot prompting, where we're actually giving an example or template to the LLM. So I could say, classify this review. I really like this movie, and I'm going to give the answer, the sentiment as positive. And then I'm going to say, classify this review. I thought the movie was horrible, sentiment. So if the LLM is good, it's going to give you a negative sentiment. And then you can take it a step further and do what we call few shot. So give it a few shot prompting. So give it a few more examples. So classify this review. I really like the movie. Sentiment is positive. The next one, classify this review. I think the movie is horrible. Sentiment negative. Classify this review. I think the movie is okay. Sentiment. So a little bit nuanced. The LLM should give you a neutral sentiment. So that's kind of a very high level of some of the prompt engineering techniques, and you should go try it out. Try, in your free time, just putting a couple of examples that you want for the desired outcome, and see how it performs. Megan? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had a question. So this is what you would be typing, for instance, let's use ChatGPT as an example. So this is what you'll be typing in a ChatGPT, and then the completion is what it's giving back to you, right?
Correct.
I think of it a little bit like a genie in some ways, because if you ask the question wrong, the genie gives you a bad answer, right? So prompt engineering is about asking the question in a way that you actually get the answer that you want, not some weird answer or bad wish that you don't want.
Correct. Yeah. So you're just really optimizing for that outcome, right? And if you have to help it along the way, and there are many ways you can help it. This is just, like high level. Give it an example. There are other ways where you can ask for its sources. So say, I want, I want to learn about some DNA protein. Please cite your sources when you respond, and it will cite that response, because I think, I'm not going to touch on it, but we've heard of LLMs hallucinating and really providing information that really sounds accurate. But a couple of ways is just say, cite your sources, so you know what's coming back to you.
And you have to go look at the source, not like that one attorney, right? To make sure that it actually exists. That is the reason to cite the source. You can't just take it for granted. I think the other thing too is you can chain together multiple prompts, right? So one of the things like I'll commonly do if I'm writing something and I'm asking it for help, it'll write something, it'll be too formal, unless they rewrite that in a more conversational tone. And so it's just kind of refining the prompt as time goes on.
Exactly.
You don't have to get it perfect the first time.
No. No, and as you're so instruction, this is kind of like going towards something like an instruction fine-tuning, is exactly prompt engineering also helps the engineers or the user understand what the capabilities of the LLM. Is it stronger at sentiment analysis? Is it stronger at classification? Is it stronger at summarizing? And then fine-tuning it in a way that you want to achieve your desired results, whether that is summarizing or sentiment analysis. So reinforcement learning. So it's really just a type of machine learning that allows its agents to learn how to behave in an environment by trial and error. So the agents are rewarded for taking actions that lead to the desired outcomes, and they're penalized for taking actions that lead to undesired outcomes. Now, way back when I was learning some of this theory, I had just had my first child. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. The world is my child's environment. I, as its mom, is his reward system. He behaves in a way that I will probably reward it in positive behavior. I'll reward him. Doesn't behave positively, I may take away something and penalize him. Well, I was going to go with that example, but humans are unpredictable. And so I'm going to stick with tic-tac-toe. All right, so tic-tac-toe, the environment, we're playing the game. The objective is really to win the game. Your environment is the board game. And then you have the player. And so the player is learning by trial and error. So every time the player or the agent wins, it's rewarded, and it knows that that's what it should be striving for. If it doesn't win, it's penalized. And so moving that to how we're using it with LLMs, we're really using reinforcement learning to fine-tune LLMs. We have the LLM is the environment for an LLM is a context window where we're entering all our prompts, and our desired outcome would be generated text that aligns with what we want, right? And so the LLM is sort of learning and getting rewarded as it goes along.
So can I ask some follow-up questions?
Yes.
Excellent. So what's an agent?
An agent can be, well, in the case of a tic-tac-toe, it's the player.
So it's you or me playing tic-tac-toe against each other in theory.
Right. So if I'm playing against a computer, that's an agent, right? The person or the thing that is trying to learn is the agent. So whatever we're trying to make it learn to be better by trial and error is the agent. In the case of the LLM, it's the LLM itself. We're trying to get the LLM to perform better or align with whatever task we've instructed it to do. Is that helpful?
That's perfect. So reinforcement learning, why is it important?
I'm going to go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry. All right, I'm jumping around. Carry on.
Yeah. Megan, can we go to the next slide?
It's coming. Sorry,
Okay.
there's a delay on my end.
All right, so I'm going to touch on reinforcement learning from human feedback, in short, RLHF. So you asked the question, why is it important? So why would I use this in an LLM? I want to address some of what we call the 3 H's. Is the desired outcome from the LLM helpful honest, or harmful? And I want to tackle all three. I'll give you a very simple example. What if I ask an LLM, how do I hack into my neighbor's Wi-Fi? The LLM is going to give me steps to do that, to accomplish that. So was it helpful? Yes, it was helpful. It gave me the correct steps to do it. Was it honest? It was pretty honest in giving me the correct steps and all the directions and instructions. Was it harmful? Yes, it was. It's illegal to do that. So it is important, to your question, Cheryl, that we fine-tune an LLM to get a more human-aligned output. So that's how I've always looked at anything that I'm doing to fine-tune a model, right? Is it aligning with the business outcome, with the LLMs especially? Is it aligning? Is it being ethical? Like, how can we minimize that harmful or dangerous topics? And then you can even use it for, better personalizing tasks, or better personalizing medical, your medical procedures, or personalizing, your mental well-being. So that's how I look at it. I don't know, Megan, if you have any additional thoughts there.
So one of the places I know.
Also,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Megan.
yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's sort of all the to the human values, or what you're trying to achieve. Obviously, also aligned to what framework you need to comply with, outcomes that you're looking for, right? Optimizing across all of those different constraints and considerations.
Yeah, you broke up just a tiny bit there, but I think we got it. And I think too, like one of the places that I think about reinforcement learning, or human feedback and reinforcement learning, is, for instance, discovery, the use of it in discovery in litigation, right? So is this a responsive document? Yes or no? If it comes back and it says this, we think this is responsive, and you tell it no, then it's trained from your feedback that it's not responsive. So the next time, hopefully it doesn't serve that same, it learns from that, right? And it doesn't serve that same document back up. Is that a good example, Christina?
That is a good example. So with RLHF, we're really fine-tuning the LLM by training a reward model, right? So that reward model is really important, right? To predict how humans will rate the quality of the generated output by the AI agent. And usually, when you're starting, you take a data set that has a human input, or something that's aligned with their, say, reviews, right? So you have reviews, and then you'll have humans say, yeah, that's positive, that's negative, that's neutral. There is an area, even after you say do your reward model training, you put it in, there is known, and I've not experienced it yet, but reward hacking. So suppose that you have you want to remove toxic information or toxic comments from your model. So you reward the LLM by generating really positive positive reviews or positive content. Sometimes, because it learns that it's getting rewarded, it might start exaggerating. So if you say, oh, I think this movie was, and it won't say just great, it'll say something like, it was the best movie ever, it was outstanding. It was just exaggerate that positive output. So there's a lot of ways, and it's very technical under the hood, to keep an eye on reward hacking as well. So there you have to put those guardrails. And again, I know the next couple of sessions are going to talk about that.
Exactly. I'm not sure what you have on the next slide, but let me ask a question. If you're about to answer it, then we can skip it. Thinking about kind of legal work and really any work. Let's use ChatGPT as an example, because that's something that everybody seems to be familiar with and we can't stop talking about. Where we're putting that into enterprises and we're saying, okay, for security reasons, we're not sending any information back to home base, right? So it's basically output only. We're just answering questions. We're not taking your data. We're not sending things back to home base. In those situations, is it learning from you or is it not?
Well,
And I know that's kind of broad, overly broad, so it depends as a financer, and you can give us some qualifications.
right, I think so it depends on what you're using, and I think if you're giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's a clear indication that it's learning from you. So anything that you put in, it's giving you a result, and then you're doing something, is definitely learning from humans. It depends, right? So like I think ChatGPT-3, like there are some companies that put in all the data and they learned and they gave their proprietary information. Then after that, there was consent around, you can use it through our our API, and we won't do anything with it. So I think you really have to look at the user agreements. But for me, when I do anything as a result of what I got from the LLM, like a thumbs up, a thumbs down, it's learning.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it kind of gets into, I think one of the points I want to make, which is as you're thinking about the tools that you're selecting, right? I think one of the really important things in legal, depending on your use case, is that it does learn from you. You want it to get better with your organization. You want it to be the way you do things, right? So whatever firm, whatever company you're with, hopefully you want it to be more and more and more and more like the way you like to do things, or the way your company likes to do things. And so if you are purchasing or using a tool where part of the agreement is it doesn't take your data, just know that it can't be learning from you, right? Because it's not necessarily taking your data. So it can't get smarter from you. It can only get smarter from home base, right? Which is the watered down, more generic content. And so I think that's one of the key takeaways I think is really important for everybody to make sure that they understand at their core. Because when I look at what's going on social media, I see people talking, and this is a foundational misunderstanding about what's possible when you're not willing to share data. And right. I'm not suggesting we should share data. I'm right. just saying, know that if you're not sending data back to home base, yeah, it's not getting smarter from you.
No, it's not. And like a lot of companies, what they're doing now, which is something that Megan, talked about, like, the smaller scale, say in executive search, I'm going to probably talk a little bit of the use cases there. In executive search, the bigger companies have the funding and the budget to do all the sophisticated work and advanced AI, but not like the boutique firms, for example. Right. But now they could take a ChatGPT or an LLM as a foundational model and put their own data in-house on that and derive insights from there, or increase their competitive advantage. So there are ways we can use the LLMs a lot easily, where we're not giving our data, we're tuning it more to our insights and our data.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're all going, probably, at least in legal.
Awesome.
Excellent. Sorry, take it away.
Okay. So the next, I think, upcoming session, maybe not the next one, but the one after that, there's Getting Ready for AI Guardrails You Need in Place Today by Shana Hoffman. So I won't go into detail into this, but for the guardrails around RLHF, transparency, these concepts is nothing new, actually. We've always kind of had this, right from the 15 years that I've been in this industry. Any model, whether I put it into production or I just use it to generate insights, look at the data, where's the data coming from, address, the biases. If you can reduce it as much as possible, pay attention to that. And so in the case of RLHF is really looking at that reward model, keeping an eye on what data is there, how you can reduce the biases there. Again, human oversight. We need human oversight over these models, all models, whether it's generative AI, any of the algorithms done in the past. Alignment, like is outcomes aligned with what you thought it would generate? Is it solving for your business problems? And then evaluation, regularly evaluate the performance of an LLM or any machine learning algorithm. A lot of my work, once we produced a model and we put it in production, it's spent a lot of time with what we call a model monitoring framework, where we're constantly generating and keeping an eye on those models and the outputs. Are they moving away, or are the insights or features moving away from what it originally was intended and built for? Next slide, please, Megan. All right, so Cheryl, you and I talked a little bit about staying away from some of the use cases around legal, but I thought this was interesting to add in. So in my previous job, I worked with Megan. She led the global data and analytics function for Spencer Stuart, which is an executive search firm. And so our approach there was really holistically trying to better every pain point or every process in the hiring pipeline, right from client and candidate outreach communication to developing internal search teams for an assignment for a role. Like a client comes to you and says, I need a CFO. So what that search team look like, right to the initial list of candidates. So we had already implemented, better candidate and client outreach by using an augmented writing platform where you're paying attention to being gender neutral in your outreach and in your job postings, or generating job descriptions, that you are not biased with age or location. So generative AI can really tailor some of that content in addition to what we were already doing, personalizing that outreach to clients and candidates, even marketing, as we've mentioned earlier. Internal search teams. So we use workplace analytics data to really understand what are the drivers of collaboration between internal search teams. Are they diverse? Do they collaborate effectively across different industries, functions, or regions? What are how do they work? Like, who are the influencers? What direction and strength are the influencers? The other area for generative AI is really getting faster and better insights. We have a lot of unstructured data in human capital. One of the pain points from an analytics perspective was to classify or summarize or infer information from unstructured data. Especially, we were building models for separate models for each task, like each task to do sentiment analysis, to summarize or to classify. With generative AI, that can easily be done with just writing effective prompts. So the amount of effort and the amount of time and money spent in producing the outcome that we were trying to achieve, which was, getting that information from unstructured data and putting it into a recommender system, can really be narrowed down and efficiently done with effective prompt writing. Megan, any thoughts on that? I know your Wi-Fi is a little choppy.
Yeah, I switched signal, so hopefully it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, right, I think there's sort of two key pieces here around the ability to really extract significant value from unstructured data, and the fact that generative AI can help accelerate that. And that piece is I know a bit in the weeds, but that I know is something you and I, Christina, have talked a lot about, of how much that will help accelerate and reduce the cost and time associated with being able to get value out of unstructured data. And so to me, that's really exciting for lots of industries, but legal's an obvious one, where you've got tons of information in documents, in emails, in notes, and being able to really identify what's valuable from that and generate those insights. I think we're at a really interesting point in time where the capabilities are there, and that democratization, where the budget and time and expertise needed is at a level that smaller and medium-sized companies can really take advantage of it.
I could not agree more. I just actually spoke at a World Litigation Forum event in Palo Alto a couple weeks ago, where the topic was the future of legal technology, and I think it's unstructured data. So couldn't agree with you more on that. We have about 5 questions, so I want to make sure we leave a couple of minutes at the end. So want to just keep that in mind. And if there's any other questions, throw them in, but I'll save those for the end for you ladies. But back to you.
Yeah, so I'll sort of go through the last couple of slides relatively quickly, and then we can get to everybody's questions. So, we said at the start, Flor Blindenbach is going to be doing the next session next week on where to start your AI journey. So again, we don't want to steal her thunder, but these are some of the, kinds of questions and ways that we think about it. Really articulating your strategy and making sure you're aligned to your organizational goals and strategy, and figuring out the plan of how you're going to get there. Really starting with what problems are you solving? We've seen a lot of companies sort of get really excited about generative AI and then start looking for a problem to use generative AI for, rather than really starting with what are the priorities and the things you most need to solve. So start with the end in mind. And then there's things, to consider in terms of what you can do with the data and technology you have, and then what should you do from a culture and change management perspective. And then, in terms of risk and opportunity, so absolutely there's a lot of risk and potential downside, and it's not easy to do this at scale. However, Christina and I have hopefully illustrated for you some examples from our past experience where you really can do this, and you can get significant financial benefit out of it when you do it correctly, and when you've got kind of a good, solid strategy in place. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that all of these capabilities aren't going away. We talked at the beginning about how they've been around a long time. Some of them are newer, but not all of it. Many organizations in highly regulated spaces have used some of these capabilities for decades. So I think for organizations, it's really about what are you going to do to adapt and adopt, and paying attention to what your competitors are doing and what some of the related organizations in your space are doing that maybe you don't directly compete with, but are relevant to how you might want to think about it. And then, of course, this is really something that needs cross-functional expertise. So it's not just people with the AI background, but you obviously need your legal and privacy, your information security, your business unit owners, all of those players coming together to make sure that your strategy makes sense and that you're executing against it in ways that work for your organization. And then real quickly, I know, there's lots of potential pitfalls, and we've talked about some of these. This is a bit of a paraphrase from a McKinsey article from a couple of years ago. But we've seen lots of people who sort of get stuck in proof of concept. So they do a couple of use cases and then they don't go further. That can be a real challenge. That's sort of in the top middle. I've seen, the data cleansing started en masse. I've seen some organizations say, well, we can't do anything until we get our data in order. And I personally have never found that to be true. There's always something you can do that's valuable, even if your data is a disastrous mess. And yes, you should still do some of the foundational pieces around your data, but you can do that in parallel to things that add value to an organization. So just, some things to kind of keep a watch out for as you're thinking about, how you might want to start doing things in your organization. And we're happy to take questions on this or follow up if people have, areas that they want to talk through. And then we'll get to the questions. I just want to show this slide real quickly. So, obviously you're welcome to follow up with Christina and myself. If you'd like a copy of the deck, we're both data people. And so if you fill out the survey to let us know what you thought of the talk, you will get a copy of the deck. So we really like the feedback. We want to know what you thought of the conversation, what we could do better next time. So we appreciate everybody's feedback. And then Cheryl, I'll turn it over to you to help facilitate questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Yeah, well, what great comment from Catherine McPherson in the notes, and something I was going to say as well, around kind of, even if we're not ready to get started on our journey at this very moment, with buying a tool and implementing it, I think it's important that we start learning and thinking about these things today. I was watching a show that was maybe 4 or 5 years old, where they were using a whole bunch of machines. This was before some of the recent advancements, to teach a computerized machine to walk. So they were using machines to teach a machine how to evolve to walk. And it took them 20 generations and a whole bunch of machines mating with each other, computers mating with each other, to learn to walk. And then a team at Northwestern yesterday used AI to teach a machine to walk in like seconds. And so just in the realm of, less than a decade, the advancement have come that quickly. And then you think about, case text and ChatGPT and all those kinds of advancements, where last Christmas, we were all sitting around eating Christmas dinner, not worried about artificial intelligence and legal, right? And now it's something we have to think about. The changes are going to be incremental, and so you have to get ready for them, I think, is a really important thing. So let me hit you with some of the questions. One of them is around kind of how the results using AI compare. And I think we've heard this in medical with radiology is one of the places, but the question here is using insurance industry as an example. How do traditional underwriting results compare to what you see when you're using AI? How do things improve? Humans versus using machines for underwriting or for things like that.
Yeah, so I'll take this, and then Christina, feel free to jump in. I sort of 2 examples. So for personal lines insurance, the kinds that you and I are familiar with as consumers, so your auto insurance, your home insurance, things like that, there effectively is no human in the loop anymore, and there hasn't been for a long time. The price you pay for your insurance policy is entirely algorithmic driven. And there is no human underwriter that stands in that process. Now, there are underwriting teams behind the scenes that help determine strategy and margins and write lots of other kind of big picture things, but the actual calculation of your premium is done entirely automatically based on machine learning algorithms and similar kinds of approaches. When you're talking about things that are more where the data is thinner, or the kinds of risks involved are much more variable. So say offshore wind farms in Germany. There's not many offshore wind farms in Germany. You as an insurance company probably don't write all of them. And you probably don't have enough volume of wind farms offshore anywhere in the world to have a really precise understanding of what you should charge. So in a case like that, algorithms can help give guidance, and it depends on the situation. You can do very low touch, sort of red, yellow, green light. So don't write this at all. We know it won't work. Green light, we're highly confident it will, or yellow, the underwriter needs to do some more work. You can do even, very kind of simple implementation paths like that. Or you can do something more sophisticated where you give an underwriter guidance around aspects of the risk, how it compares to benchmarks, some things they might want to consider, or other questions they should ask about the risk in order to determine the final price. And so you do have human in the loop for things where the data is thinner or where the risks are very, very complex, and you really don't have all the data you need. Or the volume of data to be able to do it well. So it kind of depends on the use case. But part of, I would say, all of those is there are feedback loops built in every organization I worked in to check and see, did the algorithm get it right or did the underwriter? And how do we continue to improve both parts of the system over time, regardless of who is right on any individual case? But keeping those feedback loops in place is really, really important to make sure that you can kind of do those human in the loop cases and make it work better for, for the organization over time.
Yeah, and even in legal, a couple of years ago at my last firm, we did a similar test with Kira and Luminance versus human review of our due diligence. So we'd already done the project. We knew what the outcome with humans were. We ran Luminance, the same stuff through Luminance and Kira, and the computers beat the humans in every single aspect, accuracy and quality of output. So very interesting. All right, cool. That's my questions. How are companies starting to combat deepfakes and misinformation using generative AI? If they are.
Yeah, at least, I mean, this is an area where I don't have deep expertise, but all the cybersecurity folks that I've talked to have said, these aren't new risks and they have processes and approaches in place to try to catch them. It's really just about kind of refining or expanding some of those approaches. So at least from what I've heard from the cybersecurity experts, it's not that there's a lot that's new. It's just kind of an evolution of things that they've been doing for a long time. I was talking to someone a month ago or so who works in defense and national security, and they were talking about an organization that's approaching identifying deep fakes that involve video by combining people who have deep AI expertise in those areas with people who have deep expertise from the film industry. So editors and film creators who really know how the software works in great gory detail, and sort of pairing those different kinds of expertise together to utilize, kind of what each side knows best, and finding new and better ways to identify at least potential deep fakes and flag them. So I think it's an interesting space. I'm sure it's one we're going to continue to hear about and see some evolution happening in. Christina, I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that one.
No, it's also not an area of my expertise. But like you said, Megan, we've been talking to people in cybersecurity, and they seem, they're not surprised by it. I think they're keeping a tab on it and they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for someone to follow to the audience on that, Jerry Bui, Jerrbui, is my favorite deepfake guy. He both creates them and tells you about the technology. So he's a forensic guy over at FTI. So definitely check him out. Next question. This one I love. When you input data to ChatGPT, where does it go? How's it stored? How's privacy protected, if at all? So if you use public ChatGPT, what happens to it?
Yeah, so I think some of this goes back to the comments Christina made earlier. You really do have to read the terms of use and the privacy policies. And I did a couple of posts on this maybe a month or so ago, because it is really nuanced. So it depends on what you mean by what data and where does it go. So to Christina's earlier comments, right, there are ways to use a lot of these tools so that the prompts that you enter are not fed into the training data set. Sort of your equivalent, Cheryl, of sort of going back to home base. However, most of the tools, to my understanding, do collect information on how the tools are being used, in the sense of like, did you log in and ask 300 questions of ChatGPT today? Or did you just ask one? Or have you not logged in at all? So there's various types of data that the different tools can capture. And it's really sort of the devil in the details between the privacy policies and the terms of use. And you really do have to pay attention to the details there. Because like Christina said, the way they use your data also varies based on, which subscription plan and whether it's enterprise or personal, and right, all of those different classifications of use as well.
Absolutely. Perfect. Does generative AI, when it's writing for you, does it know what it's saying?
I mean, I guess it depends. If you're asking, like, is it sentient? No. Really, what it's doing is its own prediction. So it's predicting what the next word should be, and what the next word should be, and what the next word should be. So it's doing it. It's that kind of understanding. So I guess it depends on what you mean by does it know, right? What does knowledge mean in that case? Christina, what would you say?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood the question, but I think you're asking if it's sentient, and it's not. It's really just working on the best probability of the highest probability of the next word, or the next, couple of words that it's going to generate.
Yeah, and you guys answered a completely impossible question very well, so thank you. Yeah, that's what I was asking. It doesn't really, it's not going like, oh, here's what Christina wants to know, and answering the question the way a human would by thinking it through and then answering it. It's saying, based on the question, here's what's the likely next word, and the next word, and the next word that would properly answer this question. So it understands the context, but it's not necessarily thinking it through and answering it. It's predicting. It's using math to predict. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm dumbing it down a bit, but
Yep, math on data.
Math on data, exactly right. Okay, last one. Favorite ways to use generative AI, either personally or professionally?
Probably the most common way I use it is in deck preparation. So like the beautiful AI slide that we had sort of stuck in at the beginning. But I found that really helpful for crafting. I've kind of got an outline of a talk, and then getting some ideas of how I might want to craft that, and really sort of form, images or content, how I might want to organize and create flows. I've used it for that. So that draft content creation use case.
Yeah, I'll agree. Really, that initial draft, it takes up so much of, it takes such less time to come up with something that you're struggling with. And then once it's there, that initial draft, that just refine it. For me, anything that I can automate in my life. I also do enjoy some of the generative AI, like the images. I know for Mother's Day, my husband